Melissa was preparing for her Monday shift when her phone buzzed with a text from Mr. Jenkins. "The Eagle has landed. Operation in progress." She quickly pulled up the security camera feed on her tablet. Patricia had returned from her spa weekend with a fresh blowout and rested scowl. Completely unprepared for what awaited her, her white Mercedes approached Melissa's property at the usual 7:15 am, slowing at the entrance where the familiar driveway had been replaced by an imposing wall of greenery with a deceptively welcoming archway. Patricia paused only momentarily before proceeding with entitlement-fueled confidence. The security footage, later set to Yakety Sax by Trevor Watson and viewed over 50,000 times on neighborhood social media, captured her journey in glorious 4K detail. At first, Patricia drove slowly, obviously expecting a straight path through the foliage. 6 minutes in, she reached the first dead end. Reversing awkwardly, she took another turn, only to find herself facing a reflective panel that created the illusion of a continuing path. By minute 12, her perfectly coiffed hair was visibly disheveled. At minute 15, she attempted to back out, only to become disoriented about which way she had come. At minute 20, she rolled down her window and called someone, presumably her husband, gesturing angrily. Finally, at minute 23, her Mercedes emerged from the same entrance it had entered, Patricia's designer sunglasses askew, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. The security footage captured the exact moment Patricia realized she'd been outmaneuvered. Her face transformed from confusion to disbelief to pure, undiluted rage. After 3 more failed attempts, each more desperate than the last, Patricia abandoned her car halfway through and attempted to climb over a hedge section, ruining a silk blouse in the process. Neighbors report she stormed up Melissa's walkway, like a Category 5 hurricane in Louboutins, pounding on the door with such force that it set off car alarms on the street. Melissa, already dressed in her hospital scrubs and ready to leave for her shift, opened the door calmly. "What have you done?" Patricia shrieked, her voice reaching a pitch that made dogs bark 3 houses down. "Improved my property values," Melissa replied with the composure of someone who regularly handles life-or-death emergencies. "Would you like some iced tea? You look flushed." What followed was a tirade so loud it scattered birds from nearby trees. Patricia's face cycled through shades of red as she demanded immediate removal of this monstrosity, threatening everything from legal action to having Melissa's medical license reviewed for mental instability. "Are you finished?" Melissa asked when Patricia finally paused to draw breath. "I've only begun," Patricia hissed. "This is a clear violation of at least 6 different HOA regulations." Melissa simply smiled and reached behind her door, retrieving a 3-inch binder labeled Hedge Maze Compliance Documentation. She handed it to Patricia, who nearly dropped it, unprepared for its weight. Section 1 contains photographs documenting your trespassing, along with copies of my formal requests for you to stop, which you ignored, Melissa explained professionally. Section 2 contains the HOA bylaws with detailed annotations showing how each aspect of my landscaping not only meets but exceeds community standards. Section 3 includes signed statements from a licensed landscape architect and a city planner confirming compliance with all relevant codes. Patricia stared at the binder, momentarily speechless. "I have another copy for each board member," Melissa added, "and one for Charles, if he's interested." "You'll be hearing from him," Patricia snapped, snatching her keys from her purse. "I look forward to it," Melissa replied, closing her door on Patricia's stunned face. The emergency HOA meeting Patricia called 3 days later had to be moved to the community center to accommodate the unprecedented attendance. Residents who had never shown interest in HOA matters suddenly found themselves riveted by what social media had dubbed the Great Maze debacle. Patricia arrived flanked by Charles, his first appearance at an HOA meeting in 5 years, and armed with a PowerPoint presentation claiming the hedges constituted a clear and present safety hazard and would catastrophically reduce neighborhood property values. Her voice cracked with outrage as she clicked through slides showing her Mercedes trapped in the verdant labyrinth. If an emergency vehicle needed access, she declared dramatically, pointing to a particularly unflattering screenshot of herself mid-climb over a hedge. Lives could be lost. When Patricia finished, Melissa calmly requested that the board tour the installation before voting. I believe seeing it firsthand will address any safety concerns, she suggested. Melissa sat straight-backed in the front row, her folder of evidence on her lap. Before we address that minor issue, Patricia continued, I'd like to discuss the alarming uptick in code violations in the Oak Ridge section, particularly at 1428 Maple Court. She paused significantly, looking directly at Melissa. We have standards in this community, and when one household begins to let things slide, it affects all our property values. Several homeowners turned to stare at Melissa, murmurs rippling through the crowd. When Patricia finally allowed Melissa to speak 20 minutes later, the room had already been primed against her. Melissa rose, holding her evidence folder. My driveway is not a public thoroughfare, she began. I have documentation. We've all seen your little video, dear, Patricia interrupted. Creative editing. But the HOA has thoroughly reviewed your concerns and found them to be, she paused, examining her manicure, petty and unneighborly. Melissa felt heat rising in her cheeks. If this isn't resolved, I'll have no choice but to pursue legal action. The laugh that escaped Patricia's lips cut through the room like a knife. Sweetheart, she said, setting down her gavel, my husband is Charles Worthington of Worthington, Blackwell, and Schmidt. Perhaps you've heard of him. The room filled with uncomfortable murmurs. Everyone knew Charles had crushed 3 separate lawsuits against the HOA last year alone. Melissa gathered her things, dignity intact but spirits plummeting. As she walked to her car alone, she heard the community center door open behind her. Don't let her get to you, came a gravelly voice. Mr. Jenkins, her elderly neighbor, leaned on his cane in the doorway. Worthington's made enemies of half the neighborhood with her rules. Thanks, Melissa said, but I'm not sure what options I have left. Mr. Jenkins gestured toward his immaculate garden next door to Melissa's property. You know, I wasn't always just a gardener. In my day, I designed the hedge maze at Hampton Court Palace. Made grown men weep in confusion. His eyes twinkled. Sometimes, my dear, the best solutions are hiding in plain sight. That night, drowning her frustrations in mint chocolate chip ice cream and property law forums, Melissa stepped onto her back deck. The moonlight illuminated Mr. Jenkins' elaborate English garden with its meticulously trimmed hedges. As she considered his parting words, Melissa's spoon froze halfway to her mouth. She didn't need a lawyer. She needed a different kind of professional altogether. The next morning, Melissa knocked on Mr. Jenkins' door at 7 a.m. sharp, bearing fresh-baked scones and coffee as a peace offering for the early hour. The old man answered in a perfectly pressed cardigan and slacks, looking as if he'd been awake for hours. I've been expecting you, he said with a twinkle in his eye, ushering her into a home that was equal parts English cottage and botanical library. Every surface held either an antique book or a thriving plant specimen. I saw that look on your face last night. Same look the Duchess of Marlborough had before she commissioned me to redesign the Blenheim maze. Mr. Jenkins didn't just consult, he became possessed by the project. He disappeared upstairs and returned with a dusty leather portfolio, pulling out yellowed blueprints of Hampton Court's famous maze. I've been waiting 40 years for a project worthy of my skills, he confessed, unrolling the plans with reverent hands. Garden variety hedges are fine for ordinary people, but we're dealing with extraordinary circumstances. He looked up sharply. How much can you invest in this solution? Melissa named a figure that made her wince. Her entire someday house renovation fund. It'll do, Mr. Jenkins nodded. Barely, but it'll do. Now, tell me exactly how the trespasser approaches and exits. For 3 hours, they bent over property surveys and satellite images. Mr. Jenkins sketched and erased, muttering about sight lines and spatial disorientation principles. What emerged was not just a barrier, but a botanical masterpiece that would be both beautiful and bewildering. The secret, Mr. Jenkins explained, is not to make an unsolvable maze. It's to create one where the solution constantly changes. He tapped a section of the drawing. These sections will be on motorized pivots, rearranging weekly via remote control. They use something similar at Versailles, he added, to confuse the king's enemies. For 3 weeks, Melissa became a woman possessed. By day, she saved lives in pediatric intensive care. By night, she plotted sweet, legitimate revenge. She pored over HOA bylaws with surgical precision, highlighting permissible plant species and maximum heights. She calculated sight lines and turning radii. She measured emergency vehicle access requirements to the millimeter, knowing Patricia would use any code violation as ammunition. When her sister called, concerned about the unusually large withdrawal from their shared investment account, Melissa simply said, "This is a better investment in my sanity." The installation date was strategically selected, a weekend when Patricia would be away at a spa retreat, according to the gossipy neighborhood Facebook group. Melissa arranged for the work to start at dawn on Saturday. By 5:30 a.m., an impressive convoy of trucks rolled down Maple Court, carrying mature boxwoods, Japanese yews, and flowering camellias. Landscape architects arrived with laser levels and specialized equipment, followed by electricians for the hidden lighting and automation systems. Neighbors emerged from their homes in pajamas and bathrobes, clutching coffee mugs as they watched open-mouthed. Children perched on bicycles at a safe distance, mesmerized by cranes lowering 6-foot green walls into place. Mrs. Abernathy from across the street brought out a pitcher of lemonade for the workers. Mr. Grayson, who had lost his own battle with Patricia over the color of his mailbox, silently handed Melissa a $20 bill, murmuring, "For the cause." By sunset on Sunday, what had once been a simple curved driveway had transformed into a verdant labyrinth with deceptive dead ends, false passages, and optical illusions created by strategically placed mirrors that made paths appear to continue when they actually turned sharply. "The most challenging maze I've created since Longgate," Mr. Jenkins declared proudly, surveying their work as the final truck pulled away. The pièce de résistance remained invisible to casual observers, an electronic gate with a keypad hidden behind an innocuous-looking garden gnome. When Melissa entered her private code, Mr. Whisker's birthday, the hedges silently parted like a green curtain, revealing a direct path straight through. To anyone else, the maze would offer only frustration, with its solution changing weekly thanks to the motorized sections. As twilight descended on her transformed property, Melissa walked the perimeter of her creation, trailing her fingers along the fragrant leaves. Mr. Whiskers followed at her heels, occasionally batting at low-hanging flowers. "Your move, Patricia," she whispered to the gathering darkness, the satisfaction of well-executed revenge warming her more thoroughly than the evening breeze. Melissa Chen had lived peacefully in Oakwood Heights for 3 years. Her corner lot home with its long curving driveway was her sanctuary after grueling 12-hour shifts in the pediatric ICU. The previous owners had installed a koi pond and Japanese-inspired garden that Melissa lovingly maintained, her one source of zen in a chaotic world. That tranquility shattered on a crisp autumn morning when Patricia Worthington, the newly elected HOA president with a penchant for designer pantsuits and passive-aggressive emails, decided Melissa's private driveway was the perfect shortcut to the community center. It started with a single unauthorized crossing, then daily, every morning at precisely 7:15 a.m., Patricia's gleaming white Mercedes would cruise through Melissa's property, gravel crunching under tires, fish scattering in panic as vibrations disturbed their pond. Melissa tried everything: polite requests, a clearly posted private property sign, even leaving her recycling bins as obstacles. Each attempt met with Patricia's dismissive wave and condescending remarks about community access and implied easements. When Melissa, armed with property documents and the highlighter, confirmed no such easements existed, Patricia simply replied, "Well, that's your interpretation, dear." The final straw came when Patricia, texting while driving, nearly ran over Melissa's 16-year-old one-eyed rescue cat, Mr. Whiskers. As Melissa cradled her trembling pet, watching Patricia's taillights disappear around the bend without so much as a glance back, she felt something snap inside. This wasn't just about property rights anymore. It was personal. The next morning, Melissa skipped her usual pre-work meditation to stake out her own driveway. She stood by the entrance in her scrubs, travel mug in hand, waiting. At 7:14 am, the white Mercedes appeared at the corner. Melissa stepped forward, directly in the vehicle's path. Patricia rolled down her window, her smile tight. "You're blocking the way, Honorable." "That's the point," Melissa said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "This is private property, Patricia, my private property." Patricia's perfectly penciled eyebrows arched. "The HOA has certain provisions for." "I've read every word of the HOA agreement. Twice. There are no provisions allowing you to drive through my property." Patricia glanced at her diamond-encrusted watch. "I'm going to be late for my Pilates class. Then I suggest you take Oak Ridge Drive. It's an extra 3 minutes. I timed it." For a moment, Patricia's facade cracked, revealing something cold beneath. "You know, Melissa, homeowners who create difficulties often find themselves facing increased scrutiny. I'd hate to see all those violation notices pile up. Your gardenia bushes are already 6 inches over the height restriction." Melissa felt her cheeks flush. "Are you threatening me?" "Just making an observation," Patricia said, shifting into reverse. "See you at the next HOA meeting." She backed away, tires spitting gravel. That evening, Melissa found a violation notice in her mailbox. The offense: improper obstruction of shared community access path. The fine: $150. The signature: Patricia Worthington, HOA president. Melissa crumpled the paper, startling Mr. Whiskers, who was sunning himself on the porch railing. "Sorry, buddy," she whispered, scratching behind his remaining ear. The cat purred, oblivious to the storm brewing inside his owner. In the kitchen, Melissa pinned the violation to her refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a scalpel, a gag gift from her hospital colleagues. She stared at Patricia's looping signature, the way it flourished with self-importance. 3 years of carefully cultivating peace in her life, and now this woman was trampling all over it, literally. Her phone chimed with a text from her colleague, Maya. "Bad day. Why night?" Melissa typed back, "Not tonight. Research to do." She opened her laptop and created a new folder. She named it Operation Driveway. Then she began to document everything: dates, times, photographs of Patricia's intrusions. If Patricia wanted to play by HOA rules, Melissa would learn to play the game better than anyone. Operation Driveway quickly evolved from a folder on Melissa's laptop to an obsession. She installed a high-definition security camera system, positioning the main unit to capture a perfect view of her driveway entrance. The system sent alerts to her phone whenever motion was detected, building a meticulously documented time-lapse of Patricia's daily trespassing. After 2 weeks, Melissa had compiled enough evidence to create a damning 3-minute montage. She edited it late one night after a particularly exhausting shift, adding timestamps, and in a moment of petty brilliance, setting it to Highway to Hell. When the final cut played back on her laptop, she allowed herself a satisfied smile. "What do you think, Mr. Whiskers?" she asked. The cat blinked his single amber eye slowly in what Melissa chose to interpret as approval. The next morning, Melissa dressed with particular care in a crisp blue blouse and tailored pants, her difficult parent conference outfit from her days as a nursing supervisor. She printed her formal cease and desist letter on heavy cream stationery, placed it in an envelope along with a USB drive containing her video evidence, and made 7 identical copies, one for Patricia and one for each HOA board member. She hand-delivered each envelope personally, starting with the board members. "Just some concerns about community standards I wanted to share," she explained with a professional smile. By midday, the neighborhood buzzed with whispers, residents taking sides in what 16-year-old Trevor Watson, known for his TikTok pranks, had already dubbed Driveway Gate in a viral post. Patricia received her envelope last. She answered her door in tennis whites, racket in hand. "What's this?" she asked, not bothering to mask her irritation. "A formal request that you cease using my private driveway immediately," Melissa replied evenly. I've included documentation of the 26 separate instances of trespass over the past 2 weeks. Patricia's smile tightened. How thorough of you. She tucked the envelope under her arm without opening it. Was there anything else? Yes, Melissa said. I've already shared copies with the entire board. I believe transparency is important in a community like ours. Something flashed behind Patricia's eyes. Surprise, quickly replaced by calculation. Well, thank you for your diligence. She closed the door without another word. The retaliation arrived with brutal efficiency. Within 48 hours, Melissa's mailbox overflowed with violation notices. Unsightly landscaping on her award-winning garden that had been featured in the community newsletter just 2 months earlier. Improper garbage can placement, by exactly 2 inches, according to the citation. Even unapproved wind chimes, the same bamboo chimes that had hung on her porch since before Patricia had moved to the neighborhood. At the Thursday HOA meeting, attendance reached record numbers. Residents crowded into the community center, the usual metal folding chairs supplemented with borrowed furniture from the adjacent library. Patricia arrived 10 minutes late, a power move that allowed her dramatic entrance in a cream-colored suit with pearls that matched her venomous smile. Item 3 on our agenda, she announced, shuffling papers importantly. Concerns a complaint from Ms. Chen about the use of her driveway. 6 months later, on a perfect spring afternoon, Melissa sat on her porch swing watching a father and daughter navigate her maze together. The little girl squealed with delight when they discovered the small fairy garden hidden in one of the dead ends, a recent addition suggested by the local elementary school's art teacher. That's new, called Mrs. Abernathy, watering her flowers across the street. The children will love it. Melissa waved in acknowledgement, still amazed at how the Oakwood Maze, as it had been christened on social media, had evolved from personal revenge into something unexpectedly magical. A community centerpiece that transformed their once unremarkable subdivision into a destination. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. After the HOA board voted 6-1 against forcing removal of the maze, Patricia had launched a whisper campaign, telling anyone who would listen that the installation would attract undesirable elements and become an eyesore once the novelty wore off. Instead, something remarkable happened. As spring arrived, the carefully selected plants bloomed in cascading waves of color. Bees and butterflies appeared in unprecedented numbers. Local garden enthusiasts began stopping by to admire the craftsmanship. A photographer from the regional paper wrote a feature titled Labyrinth of Beauty, when neighborhood dispute leads to art, complete with drone footage that showcased the maze's intricate design. Melissa had initially been content to let the maze serve its original purpose, preventing Patricia's trespassing. But when the elementary school principal called asking if a field trip might visit to study geometry and botany in a living laboratory, something shifted in Melissa's perspective. Working with Mr. Jenkins, she added educational placards identifying plant species. She installed a curved path accessible to wheelchairs and strollers. For Easter, she hid dozens of eggs throughout the maze for neighborhood children. By summer, the weekly maze days had become a community fixture, with food trucks parking nearby on Saturday afternoons. For Patricia, the maze represented an unwinnable game. Her influence in the community withered as the hedges flourished. Neighbors who once cowered before her violation notices now openly praised Melissa's creation within earshot. The final blow came during a dinner party at the Worthingtons when Charles, loosened by 3 scotches, laughed about the whole affair. "You have to admire her ingenuity," he said to their guests. She found the perfect legal revenge. The look Patricia gave her husband could have withered the entire maze. 2 weeks later, a for sale sign appeared in the Worthingtons' yard. Patricia told anyone who would listen that they were upgrading to a more exclusive community. The rumor mill suggested Charles had grown tired of his wife's obsession with the maze situation and delivered an ultimatum. Whatever the truth, the day the moving truck arrived, Melissa sent over a peace offering, a small potted boxwood with a card reading simply, "May you find your way." The new HOA president, ironically, Mr. Jenkins himself, worked with Melissa to establish an annual garden tour that raised thousands for the children's hospital where she worked. The maze evolved with the seasons. Summer concerts in the central clearing, a haunted hedge maze for Halloween, complete with volunteer nurses playing zombies, and a winter wonderland of lights that rivaled professional displays. On quiet mornings, Melissa still enjoyed her coffee on the porch, Mr. Whiskers, now sporting an Instagram-famous eye patch, purring in her lap. She would watch visitors discover the joy of getting pleasantly lost, seeing couples steal kisses in hidden corners, hearing children squeal with delight upon finding the center. "I never expected this," she confided to Mr. Jenkins one evening as they watched the sunset from her porch, the maze casting intricate shadows across her lawn. "I just wanted her to stop driving through my property." "The best gardens grow beyond their gardener's intentions," he replied with philosophical calm. "That's their magic." On the 1-year anniversary of the maze's completion, Melissa received an unmarked envelope. Inside, a newspaper clipping about the maze's growing popularity and a single anonymous line in elegant handwriting. "Well played." Melissa never confirmed who sent it, but she had that note framed. It hung in her home office alongside the original cease and desist letter, bookends to a story about boundaries crossed and reclaimed, about creativity triumphing over pettiness, and about how sometimes the most unexpected detours lead to the most beautiful destinations.